I ended up in septic shock.
Gee.
Luckily I lived very close to the hospital. And so they got me there, got me stabilized. But I remember hearing the doctors arguing over how fast I was going to die that day, as in I had hours. And I distinctly remember thinking, excuse me, I get to vote. Now, the conversation was a little bit different, according to my husband, but he said, no, that was really pretty much what they were doing.
Hello and welcome to Beyond Diagnosis, a podcast to raise your awareness, decisions, and voice for alternative practices so you can take back control of your health. I'm Rita De Michele, your host, a mindset and empowerment coach, and the founder of the Onus platform. Join me each week so you can create the health of your dreams. Do you have cancer and have feelings of hopelessness or loneliness? Then you'll love this story with Deb Krier, a cancer warrior who is rewriting the playbook on how to live with cancer. Diagnosed with stage 4 triple positive breast cancer in 2015 and then thyroid cancer in 2023, she is on a mission to ensure that we are no longer fine, in inverted commas, with cancer. Her goal is to empower those dealing with cancer to embrace their inner warrior so that they can build a tribe, energize their voices, and expand their choices. Wow, what an intro. Hello, Deb.
Oh, Rita, hello. How are you?
I'm really well. And by the sounds of it, after all of that, you sound really well, which is fantastic.
People look at me and go, you don't look sick. I'm like, thanks.
Well, I was, but now I'm not.
Right, right.
And that is must be so amazing for you to go through cancer twice and I assume that was such an aggressive form of breast cancer
Mhm.
that you had.
It was a big shock.
Yes.
I had gone in for my regular checkup, just like I did, like we all do, right? We go once a year, and they called and said you need to come back and redo your mammogram. Well, I used to work for an oncologist, and I used to work for the American Cancer Society, so I thought, uh-oh.
You
It
knew what
wasn't
was
that I
coming.
didn't smile pretty,
Yeah.
right? And so I went back, but the initial diagnosis was stage 0. So not worry, just watch type of thing. And I didn't have a lump, I didn't have a bump. I had microcalcifications. And so I did the thing that I tell people not to do. I went to Dr. Google and I said, Dr. Google, what is a microcalcification? Because I'd never heard of it. And turns out it's these things that women of a certain age get, everyone. And it's simply because the hormones in our bodies are changing. And so these things are just floating around in our bodies. And the vast majority of the time, there's no problem. But I am special. And so what happened was these were starting to kind of coalesce and come together, but they really weren't worried. I didn't get an oncologist. And so we did, a couple other biopsies, puttered around for several months, and then finally decided to surgically remove lymph nodes from the affected side. And 8 of 12 lymph nodes were positive for cancer, which meant it had spread. So
Wow.
I went from stage 0 to stage 3, poof, right? And so that would, but it was all annoying. I remember telling my doctor, I'm sorry, I don't have time for this. And she looked at me like I was an idiot. Um, and and it was just, well, we need to fix this, we need to get it done. Right. So then I did get an oncologist. I chose, and part of it is my upbringing. Like I said, I worked for an oncologist, I worked for the American Cancer Society. I decided to go with the traditional approach to dealing with breast cancer. But every person is different, and every person needs to make the decision that they feel is best for them. And the doctor does not make that decision for them. Right? We
Oh, I
make the
like
decision
that.
ourselves. Yeah, yeah, we have to advocate for ourselves. And so, but I had decided to do chemo, then surgery, then radiation. And the first chemo that I took was a big, massive dose because these things were, throughout my body, and it about killed me. And so I've had far more complications based on septic shock than from the cancer, because my organs did start to shut down. And I spent 7 weeks in the hospital, got out, got well enough that then I had decided to have a double mastectomy without reconstructive surgery. But again, total personal choice for people. If I had been 30 years younger, it would have been a different decision.
Yes.
But I was like, who needs those? Right. And plus I didn't want to worry about it. And I didn't want reconstructive. There was just lots of reasons. Got a complication from that my surgeon had never seen. Back in the hospital I went, right?
Wow.
um and then things were going well. I had radiation. I sailed through radiation, had absolutely no complications from that. So I had 30 treatments. But yeah, I had no complications from that. But along the way I did deal with everything, like I said, that I, because of the septic shock, my kidneys have taken a beating. I've had surgery 5 times on my kidneys since my initial diagnosis.
Wow.
But I also kept working almost this entire time. I tell people, hospitals, at least here in the United States, have really good Wi-Fi. Same with doctors' offices. And I mean, there was one time where I was in the hospital for 7 weeks, 7 days, and nobody knew, because I just kept working. And so, and then along the way, I actually had I've had 3 cancers. I did have a basal cell carcinoma, which is just sounds horrible and awful, right? But it's just a very simple skin cancer.
Ah,
And I tell people, this freckly little redhead that never knew what sunscreen was, that was probably going to happen no matter what. And took care of it very easily. And then I did develop thyroid cancer a couple of years ago, had to have my thyroid removed. It had not spread. And so I didn't have any further treatment for that. But it is a totally new cancer. It was not a spread of the breast cancer. So I have had 3 separate cancers. So I'm the kid that grows cancers. But you just keep going, right? Making the decisions along the way that you think are best for you.
well, your attitude is so commendable. Like the way you approached it, and just you can tell by the tone of your voice, and even now the way you were speaking, I'm sure you were like that before. It was like, there's no way this is getting
Mhm.
me.
Yeah,
And
I really was annoyed. I was like,
how dare
seriously?
it interrupt my life?
I know. And when they called to tell me that I had the third cancer, the thyroid cancer, my caller ID showed that it was the doctor. And I thought, oh, that's not good. They don't call. And so, I answered and she told me. And the first word out of my mouth was one of those other F words that we can't repeat.
Yeah,
And she laughed and she said, that's why you'll be just fine. I went,
exactly,
mm-hmm,
exactly. It's
mm-hmm,
so. Do you believe, I'm sure you do, that a very positive attitude and a
mm-hmm,
very upbeat, approach
mm-hmm.
to it is so much better than
Yes.
people who suddenly
Mm-hmm,
get the
mm-hmm,
shock but go the other way and,
mm-hmm. Right.
go into I don't like to say it like they feel sorry for me, but they tend to wallow
Mm-hmm,
in it and it
right.
becomes very heavy and negative.
Yeah. And there are times where I am mad at the world. Pretty much only my husband knows, that today is a bad day. Because there are bad days. I'm actually still in treatment. I go, let's see, today is Tuesday. I go on Thursday for treatment. Um, and so, I've been in treatment for 9 years. I go every 21 days.
When you say treatment, do you mean
So
more
I get
radiation?
I no, so I get a drug called Herceptin,
Ah,
which is it's a pretty rough drug, and it sets me back for a couple of days. But then I go merrily along. And then 21 days later I do it again. But it's and I don't know how long we're going to continue that. I am approaching the magic, the spectacular 10-year mark.
amazing.
And so that's kind of the thing. But yeah, I think part of it was, I mentioned that I worked for that oncologist. It has been 35 years ago or so. I was just a wee little thing. Um, and I was office staff. I'm not medically trained. And he was a delightful man. And one of the things that he would tell the patients was 99% of this is in your head. If you think you're going to die, you will die. If you think you're going to live, you will live. Now, it still might only be for 5 days or 50 years, who knows? But how are you living in that time frame?
That's so
And he
important.
had patients who refused treatment, and he was fine with that. He never tried to talk anybody into treatment as long as they were making educated decisions. And we had several patients that we, bid adieu to and never saw them again. Have no idea what happened with them, but they were not going to go through the traditional type of treatment. And he very much honored and respected that.
That's unusual. You
Mhm.
don't hear that very often. That's
Especially from like
fantastic.
35 years ago, right?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. That would have been,
Hmm.
unheard of. So
Hmm.
knowing what chemo did to your body
Hmm.
and how you
Hmm.
reacted, if you were to get cancer today, would you still go down that path?
I don't know. And we did try chemo again, and I got the same reaction. It just wasn't as bad. I just ended up with sepsis as opposed to septic shock. Um, and in the hospital for 7 days. But I don't know. And what my oncologist has, and it was a different protocol, so totally different drugs. And so what my oncologist has said is, unless there is something where it is the only choice, she wouldn't do it. And she said, because clearly my body just says, nope, nope, we don't like that. And so I love that. I love that she says, something like that. And protocols may change, who knows? But yeah, it would. And I thought about that with the thyroid cancer, was what choice would I make? Now I would probably, still have done radiation or something like that. But yeah, I just don't know that I would go the route of chemo, because yeah, it just, my body did not like it.
Yes, yeah, and that's it. It's so individual, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Some
Mm-hmm.
people can sail, well, I wouldn't say sail through it, but
They have an
they,
easier time.
they have an
Mm-hmm.
easier time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Their complications and their symptoms
Mm-hmm.
from it aren't as
Mm-hmm.
severe, and someone else
Right.
could be
Mm-hmm.
like yourself, go into a
Mm-hmm.
septic shock.
Right. Right.
So,
Well, and I tell people, never assume anything, because people assume that their hair is going to fall out. They assume that they're going to be nauseated, all of those things. And I tell them, tell your doctor, because they might be able to change things, they might be able to add, they might be, all sorts of things, because you're right. Every diagnosis, you might have the same diagnosis, but that's where it ends, because every body is different.
absolutely, I love that message. And you also have another message around being fine, and you put that in
Mm-hmm.
inverted commas, and you
Mm-hmm.
call it, what's the I'm fine syndrome?
I'm not fine. Yeah, the I'm fine syndrome. That's the thing that we all do, right? Rita, how you doing today? You're going to say, I'm fine. We
Mm,
say that to our doctors. We say that to the waitress at the restaurant. We say that to our best friends. All of those things, I'm fine. It's just habit.
yeah.
The problem is we're usually not. And it's one way or the other. We might feel like we're going to run a marathon, or we might feel like I'm really having a bad day, or I'm not well, or I've got these pains, whatever it is. But our first instinct is to say, I'm fine. And so we need to get over that. I tell people I'm hunky dory.
Hunky
And if
dory.
I don't say I'm hunky dory, they know there's a problem. But we need to get out of that habit. Now it's okay to tell the waitress at the restaurant you're fine, right? She doesn't need to know the whole story. But anybody else, and then you do have to know, how much detail am I going to go into? Do they really want to know? But then we, as the recipients of those fines, also need to look and read their body language. What was their tone? Maybe they are doing fine, and fine was a good thing for that day. Or maybe it's, I'm struggling. And then we can say, is there something I can do to help you? So yeah, fine to me is one of those four-letter words that begins with an F.
Yeah. And it's true, we do have that as an
Mm-hmm.
automatic reaction,
Mm-hmm.
don't we?
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Right.
also the person who's asking how you are, that's also an automatic question.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Right.
like, are you actually asking that question with true
Mm-hmm.
intention behind it to
Mm-hmm.
actually know how that person
Mm-hmm.
is?
Right.
Or are you asking and
Mm-hmm.
hoping they actually just
Mm-hmm.
do say that they're
Mm-hmm.
fine because
Right.
anything else
Mm-hmm.
you don't really
Mm-hmm.
want to know?
Right. Right.
You know,
Yeah, you get really funny questions. I had one person who said, and this was just this the earlier, or it would have been late last year. Hadn't seen him for a while, but he knew what, and he said, "So are you still dealing with that cancer thing?" And I said, "Well, yeah." I mean, it was, and then he didn't know what to say, right? But that way, I could tell from his reaction, he didn't want to go any further. So that was where I left it. But yeah, dealing with that cancer thing.
That that's really, I don't know what to say to you, but I think I better ask.
Yeah, and yeah, that and that you we get that too, right? I know you've been ill, so I probably should ask how you're doing, but I don't want to know. You
Yes,
know?
yes. It does make, I think certain conditions do make people feel
Mhm.
very uncomfortable, and I
Right.
think
Hmm.
one big one
Hmm.
is cancer.
Hmm. Right.
Because everyone fears it so much. But
Hmm.
and you also have coined, which I really loved when I was reading your work, the acronym LIVE, as in L
Right.
dot I dot V dot E dot.
Hmm. Right.
Tell us why you've got this acronym.
So I started an initiative several years ago called Try Not to Die Live.
Mhm.
And so the live part, as you said, is an acronym. And the whole trying not to die part is when we get ill, or even if we're just grumpy, or one of those people, we get so caught up in trying to not die that we forget that we have to live. And so yeah, so live is an acronym, and it's about leading your tribe. I'm very much a big, we have our tribe. I am a warrior, and I'm building my tribe around me. So we're going to lead our tribe, and build the tribe that we need. Then we're going to invigorate our souls. We have to put ourselves first, which is a little bit hard for women, right?
Mm,
But then we're going to voice our feelings, and we have to be honest with ourselves first. How am I feeling? What am I thinking? All of those things, and then be honest with others. And so we're going to voice our feelings, and then we're going to elevate our mindset and know that no matter what, we will be okay.
yeah, I love that. And that is so important to feel, I think anybody who, I don't think you need, actually, what I want to say is, I don't think you need to have cancer to actually live by that acronym.
Right. Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
it's
I think everybody
fantastic.
should. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. I love it. And it is very empowering.
Hmm.
And I think that's what you need. And so
Hmm.
that's why I wanted to ask you, um, you say living is the only cure for cancer,
Hmm.
right? So what would you say to someone who has just received a diagnosis or has been dealing cancer for a while and they just aren't feeling empowered, to look
Hmm.
beyond their limited prognosis,
Hmm.
even to look for, say, I know you did
Hmm.
chemotherapy, but
Hmm.
if they don't want to do chemotherapy or they
Hmm.
are, also to look beyond that
Hmm.
for any alternative
Hmm.
therapies that may help. A lot of
Right.
people do go
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
deep into a sad
Hmm.
place.
Hmm.
What would you say to them?
Well, sometimes you can't say anything. They're just going to be there. They might have been, an angry, bitter person, who felt the weight of the world, was a negative person as opposed to a positive person, and so there might not be anything you can say to them. But for those who are thinking it is a death sentence, because that is one of the first things people think, right? You're told you have cancer, and you think, I'm going to die.
Mm,
And and so I'm sorry, but we're all going to die. I keep trying to figure out how not to, but it's going to happen. And so I do try, and I think the thing is that they need to, they and whoever's talking to them, we need to honor them and their feelings, and let them know that it's okay to not be happy and to not think, whoa, this is going to be a great thing. I'm one of the first people that will say the bad words to somebody if they tell me there's, they've been diagnosed, because when we tell somebody else, what normally happens is they, well, you're going to be okay, you're going to fight this, they're so positive that they're a little overwhelming, and we don't give them any space to feel bad and to feel angry and to feel that grief and that fear. And so we want to acknowledge that and know that it's normal. It is perfectly normal to feel that way. Now, if it's a temporary thing, that's okay. If it is something that is more long term, then they might need to they might need to ask for help. And I tell people that is one of the strongest things that you can do, is to ask for help, whether it's a therapist or maybe it's a spiritual person, whatever it is. It shows that you're really actually very strong to say, I need help. And then you just kind of go from there. But sometimes people just need to know that you think, okay, Rita, what can I do?
Yes, yes. And not try and problem solve everything for
Mm-hmm.
you. Just
Yeah.
to
Or
actually,
worse, they do that. Well, my grandma had that and she died.
yeah,
Right.
I know. As soon
Mhm.
as you get something, all the comparative stories come out, don't they?
Mhm.
Which
Mhm.
is, so unhelpful. But did you ask for help, Deb? And if you did,
I did.
and who did you see?
So I asked for help from my friends and my family, and even my medical care team, people like that. It because it's a big challenge. But some of the things were just asking for a little bit of help. I have my own business, and I have basically one primary client, which I know is not a good thing to do from a business perspective, but I like them, so that's all right. And when I told them that this was happening, there was a fear, right? Maybe they would say, well, you can't work with us anymore. Bleh. Or they
Mm,
might say, you can't work with us anymore because you need to focus on getting well. My client said, what can we do to help? And which is why they are still my client, right? But yeah, sometimes it's just asking for little things. When I'd been in the hospital for so long, one of the things they told me was, you need to get out and you need to walk. You need to get fresh air and sunshine, right? Because I had been cooped up in those walls of the hospital for way too long. Well, my husband had been able to go back to work, so that was a really good thing. But that meant I was by myself, and I was using a walker. Can you imagine? I had to use a walker. Um, and but more importantly, I knew I could not go by myself, because what if I went thud? I mean, that
yes.
was a pretty good. And so I post on Facebook, because that was kind of where I kept people apprised of what was going on. And I said, I need someone to come walk me 15-20 minutes a day. And we actually have a really nice trail here by the house. And I said, leash provided. And because I've gone through this whole thing kind of with a wacky sense of humor. There were people who, did I feel every day? No, but I definitely had people who came and helped me. Other times it's, I need somebody to go to the grocery store for me, or I when I got COVID, I needed somebody to go fill the prescription because my husband had COVID too, and so we couldn't leave the house. And but it's hard for us to ask for help, because for whatever reason we think we should be independent and not ask for help. But
Mm.
it really is sometimes one of the biggest things that you can do for somebody, or for yourself, obviously, is to say, I need help. And for me, on some of it was, I need somebody just to come and sit with me for a while. I'm going a little stir crazy. I need somebody to just come, and or FaceTime. This was before Zoom, things like that. Just spend some time with me.
That, yeah, I find that fascinating that you actually put it out on Facebook and people responded. I just think
They,
that's so creative. It's clever. I
Mhm.
wouldn't in a million years think to do that. Like it just
Well,
doesn't come naturally. And that's what I was
mhm,
going to ask. What about the people that those sort of things or ideas to reach out
mhm.
like that doesn't come naturally, or they really, really struggle to
Right.
ask for help?
Right. Or maybe they're just very private. I
Mm,
was talking to someone today, and he said there's less than 20 people who he has told. And he didn't even tell his grown children until he had, his ducks all in a row and everything. Um, but yeah, for now, I've always been the tell the world everything type of person, right? But others, it is hard for them to ask for help, and I think that's when they have the biggest struggles. And because it just doesn't come naturally to them. Now, it's really funny because, like, in my business and in my volunteer world, I'm going to do it all person, right? And people keep telling me, there's this word card called delegate. And I'm like, oh man. um and that comes hard for me because it's only one way to do it, and it's my way.
Ah,
And
control.
so I know, and so for me to ask for somebody to do something, that does take, it takes me, a while to convince myself I need to do that.
Oh, that's interesting because how you started it
Mhm.
didn't seem to reflect how you've just
It's
finished it.
Yeah, it does not come easy to me to ask for help.
But the message there is you need to,
Hmm.
especially in these
Right. Hmm.
situations, especially
Right.
if you say you don't have
Hmm.
children or
Hmm.
your
Hmm.
family lives
Hmm. Right.
interstate or
Hmm.
whatever.
Hmm.
You do need that
Hmm.
support. And
Right.
even I'm sure
Right.
your husband would have
Hmm.
needed some support.
Hmm. Right. Yeah, there were family that came and stayed, other people who offered, to help and do things. And but the other thing that I've discovered during this is other people don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. They don't, and so they might
Yeah,
say, if they say something, because back to, they don't want to know. They don't want you to be upset or all this, so they're just not going to talk about it. They're going to ignore it. But it's there. Yeah.
I know.
But they might say, hey Rita, just tell me if you need anything. And that they mean so well with that, but my brain cannot grasp that.
Yeah.
And so instead say something specific. Can I go to the grocery store for you? Can I drive you to an appointment? And worse, can I go in with you? Right? Because I tell people, for it's at least the main big icky scary appointments, take somebody with you because you need another set of ears and another brain paying attention. But yeah, can I bring you dinner? Can I just come and sit with you? All of those things. And it's a little uncomfortable, right? Because we think, well, they might tell us no. Well, they might tell us no, but at least we made that offer. um or I
Yes.
might say, okay, if you might say, well, can I bring dinner on Thursday? And I might say, well, Thursday is not good, but would Saturday work?
That's so true. That let me know,
Hmm.
that let me know what I can do
Hmm.
is such a kind of empty
Right.
request.
And we don't want to impose.
Yeah, because no one's going to let you
Hmm.
know
Hmm.
what you can
Hmm.
do.
Right.
The majority of people
Hmm.
don't.
Hmm.
Yeah, like you said,
Right.
you don't want to
Hmm.
impose. That
Hmm.
that is such a good point. And I
Hmm.
love that because that just goes around the whole advocacy thing, learning to
Hmm.
advocate for yourself.
Right.
So
Hmm.
in that frame,
Hmm.
what are some of the questions like? What are like 5 questions to ask a doctor when you're
Hmm.
faced with cancer?
Well, these are scary questions because the second you heard that word, your brain shorted out, which is again why I say take somebody with you. Write down your notes so that you make sure you know what you're going to ask. But yeah, and some of these are kind of duh questions, but we forget because our brain has shorted out. I mean, one of the first things is, what type of cancer do I have and what stage is it? And what does that mean? That's kind of all one question. And what they're going to do is they're going to give you a bunch of paper to read. I always think that's funny, and you're like, no, 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 no. And then what are the treatment options? What are the side effects? And the scariest one, what is my outcome projected to be? And my final diagnosis, and you said it in the intro, is stage 4 triple positive breast cancer. Now, stage 4 breast cancer is not considered curable. Now, it might never come back, but it is not considered curable. And and so that's really scary. I mean, knowing that, and the doctors will give you the percentages and the averages, which is all they can deal with, right? And so they will say, well, most people will have a reoccurrence within the first 5 years, and then within the next 10, and then if they get past 10, it's and obviously each one differs with the type of cancer and all of those things, but you want to ask, what is the prognosis? And, one of the questions I asked my doctor was, what are other treatment options? And some of them, were very traditional, and others said, okay, you want to look at alternative types. And especially if you have a type of cancer that might be a little more aggressive or something like that, they might say, you might want to look at whether it's a test or something like that. And yeah, and then other things just along the lines of, getting massages, yoga. They finally figured out nutrition plays a big role in this, right?
Finally.
Yeah, and so you want to ask your doctor, what are the other things that I should be doing? And one of the things that I really love about my oncologist, they have a sign in every treatment room, and it says, "Do not leave this room if your questions have not been answered." And there have been times where they've left, and I've gone, "Wait, thought of something, right?" And like one of my doctors is really good with responding to emails. He loves doing that. Now he's younger, right? And so that's just, and so find the way that works. But you are the person in charge. If your questions haven't been answered, you either didn't ask them, but if you ask them and they weren't answered, make sure you get those answers. Now, it might not be the answer you want, right? Because we want them to say, "You're going to be fine."
Exactly.
But we need to do that. And other things like, are there lifestyle changes I need to make? Are there support groups? All of this just kind of depends on you. Now, I was not a support group person. It was just not something that I was going to do. But for others, they're lifesavers. And so and then other things, what side effects should I be looking for? What, is there going to be pain? And what do we do for that? And just, and like I said, make that doctor or that medical care provider answer those questions. I fired 3 doctors, actually more than that, during this entire process, because they were good doctors. They just weren't meshing with me.
That's a really important point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think asking those important questions to advocate
Mm-hmm.
for yourself is
Mm-hmm.
incredibly
Mm-hmm.
important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you would say the same. You have to urge people not to be scared
Mm-hmm.
of the answer. So many
Right.
people don't ask the questions because they're
Mm-hmm.
scared
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
if they're
Mm-hmm.
not going to get the answer
Mm-hmm.
that they need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it don't, like you say, and I'm sure it helped you.
Mm-hmm.
Having that knowledge
Mm-hmm.
helped you know at least a path and a
Mm-hmm.
goal and what
Right.
to do for
Mm-hmm.
yourself.
Right. And it is perfectly fine to say you want a second opinion. Now here in the States, your insurance might not pay for a second opinion. That's annoying. But so you might have to pay for that doctor's visit. But and I was fortunate. I did get a second opinion, and she said, "I agree totally with what they have done." She said, "I wouldn't have done anything different," which put my mind at ease. And but yeah, you need to be able to ask, somebody else, "Hey, what's going on? What would you do?"
Yeah, absolutely. And that does um, alleviate the anxiety of,
Mm-hmm.
but someone else could have done something
Right.
different,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to get that second opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It's like anything in life. You buy
Mm-hmm.
a house, whatever, you want a second opinion on most
Right.
things.
Mm-hmm.
So why
Mm-hmm.
would your health be any
Mm-hmm.
different?
Right.
It's you have to approach your health the same way you approach most
Mm-hmm.
things in life. You
Mm-hmm.
expect a good outcome, you expect value for your
Mm-hmm.
money, and you expect second
Mm-hmm.
or third opinions.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, can you tell us what do you think was the biggest thing cancer taught you in your life?
Don't put things off. We talk about our bucket lists. And so, it's, don't think, well, I'll do that 10 years from now, because we don't know. I could walk out and get hit by a bus tomorrow, right? I don't want my headstone to say, "If only I would have." So, don't put things off. We're planning some big trips. And, will we take them? Yeah, we will. Because my husband knows that once I set my mind to it, we're just going to do it. But it's also, what type of life do you want to live? What type of people do you want to associate with? We were chatting before the program about the political situation. There are people that I just won't have anything to do with, or the people who, oh, I really like the people who said, "You must have done this yourself." Like, what? Why would you say that to somebody?
Oh, you must have
Yes,
done the cancer to yourself?
yes. Now, am I a lazy slug? Yes. Do I eat fast food? Yes. Who knows whether that, was part of the reason or not. But yeah, we need to avoid those toxic people and, find the positive ones. I mean, my community of people are so incredible. And some of them I've never actually met in person. I've just kind of got this broad range for my tribe, and members have come, members have gone. But I've had a lot of surgeries, in part due to the septic shock. The procedure I had in just last December was number 35, 35th surgical procedure in 9 years. But I remember one time when I was in for something, and I thought, well, I can't die. All of those people will be mad at me. But at the same point, I felt that bubble of support, knowing that all those people were thinking, praying for me, sending healing thoughts, all of those various things. And if they were thinking, oh, again, at least they didn't say it.
Yes. So you definitely sound like a very positive, energetic person.
Mhm.
Do you find having cancer helped you become stronger or see life, your own
Mhm.
life differently?
I think so. Now, I've pretty much always kind of been like this, but I think it did make me realize maybe what the right priorities are for me,
Mm,
and 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 to really think, what do I want my legacy to be, um, and how can I get through this the best possible way? Which for me is to laugh. For other people, it's to become very introspective, right? Whatever works for you is what you need to do, because there's no right or wrong. You just need to do what is going to work best for you.
yes, that's so true. And for anybody who has just recently been diagnosed for cancer or is dealing with cancer, or maybe going through chemo
Mhm.
or alternative therapies, what piece of advice could you leave our audience with today?
You are the decision maker. You are in charge.
Mm, that is absolutely spot on, and it's so true. I love that. Short and sweet. You're in charge. You're the
Mhm.
boss. This has been great. Thank you, Deb, for coming on and sharing your story with everybody. And if people want to know more about you and what you do and what you have to offer, all of Deb's links will be in the show notes. Reach out to her. As you can tell, she is just a ray of sunshine. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your incredible story.
Thank you for the honor. It was truly an honor to chat with you.
Thank you so much. I would love to know, what was the biggest insight or aha moment you got from this interview? So you can now speak up, take action, and make informed decisions for your health. And if you like this episode, get instant access to your free ebook, Alternative Wisdom, Taking Back Control of Your Health, at life-onus.com.